Hello everybody, this is Dino GTO and I'm going to try and kick this video out relatively quickly. Um, this is about the T25 Pilot Mission Marathon. I'm not going to talk too much about the mission itself because the first one, and it kind of worries me a little bit because of the way they're doing this, it's 15 days of missions, but I believe if the way this is worded, it looks like there's going to be a different mission every day. It makes sense honestly because if was the mission for every day, everybody would have one of these. Personally, I'm not going for this thing, but that's because I have an M46KR and I don't really feel like I need one. And there's also a couple of other points I want to mention, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, it can be 13 of the 15 missions. You can afford to miss 2 days, and you get a T25 Pilot. And you can also buy some tokens in order to get the vehicle. So yeah, that basically sums it up. But yeah, let's talk about the main thing people are interested in. They have this little diagram here, but the stats on this are actually different to the stats in Tanks GG. So I'm going to focus on the stats in Tanks GG, but I have a feeling these stats here are probably more relevant. But right now, the stats that I can actually compare with any kind of ease are in Tanks GG. And I also feel like if these are the stats that they're going to use, I feel like the main difference, one of the main differences I've noticed is the engine power and the weight are different in this in comparison to Tanks GG. They're similar, but they're still different. So yeah, and also this here difference here is pretty significant. It says 203 mantlet. According to Tanks GG, that's bullshit. um, I mean, look at this. Look at the size of the mantlet and look how little of the area is actually covered in actual armor. I mean, there's little tiny areas to the outskirts, but that's it. And there isn't even one of those areas at the top for some bizarre reason. But yeah, yeah, the mantlet, according to this, should be good, but it's not. Yeah, I'm going to compare it to the Tanks GG version, as I mentioned. Some of the statistics are different in this, but I feel like this is probably right. But I'm going to compare it to the Tanks GG one anyway because it allows me to do it with some kind of ease, and I actually have all the stats in Tanks GG, unlike this, because I don't have ground resistance stats, I don't have gun stats, I don't have, when I say gun stats, I mean like soft stats and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to do the Tanks GG version. Now, first thing I'll compare it to is the FV4202. First thing I'm going to say right off the bat is FV4202 easily has better armor. It has the auto bounce area here, which can bounce like Object 268 and shit if you angle it right. Its turret, I would argue, is better. It's got this 200mm area here. The upper part of the turret is pretty solid when it's angled in an appropriate way. These two areas here are both kind of shit, but for the most part the turret's pretty solid. And I'm just going to do this quickly. Yeah, the T25 Pilot has no armor to speak of. I mean, this is like, let's angle the side at an auto bounce angle. About there. Let's see how much effective armor we're getting. So this is an auto bounce angle. It's got 100mm of frontal armor. That's in comparison to, that's like a Tiger 1 armor level. So yeah, it's not very good in terms of armor. In the mantlet there I showed you is kind of shit right now at least. So yeah, let's get on to the stat comparison. I'm using the compare tool in Tanks GG. So the green stats are where this is better technically than the FV4202. Although I'd ignore the armor parts because the FV4202 I believe actually has stronger armor overall. But yeah, let's see. So these are all the stats areas where this thing is actually better than the FV4202. I'm just going to go through them one by one. In terms of DPM, there's 130 difference. T25 Pilot easily has the better DPM. It has 10 more alpha damage per shot. It has 34mm more. The FV4202 has 34mm more pen than the T25 Pilot, so it's a pretty significant disadvantage to the Pilot. The reload time for the Pilot is better, but only slightly. It's not as big of a difference as people think, but because of the 10 alpha damage difference, that makes the DPM difference pretty significant. Aiming time easily better by 0.3 of a second. Dispersion's definitely worse by 0.03. and these stats here are definitely better. But here's what I would argue with with these parts here. The aiming time doesn't matter that much on the FV because it's typically going to be sitting at long range. Or well, no, the aiming time doesn't matter as much on the FV because it has so much more penetration, and the FV's typical playstyle is either hold down or long range. So like these stats here don't matter as much in those kind of areas. I would say these stats more matter at the close range where this thing here would excel. So these stats here I would say probably aren't as important on the FV, but it's still definitely an advantage to the T25 Pilot. It's got a higher caliber gun by 6.6 millimeters. It's got 4 alpha difference in damage to modules. Wow, they're really nitpicky about this part, aren't they? I mean, I never expected them to have a separate module damage for a gun that's only a tiny bit lower in caliber. That's weird. But yeah, here's one of the big differences. This thing gets 853 shell velocity in comparison to 1020. Now, you would definitely notice a huge difference between those two values. That's really significant actually. Like, the sniping at range with this thing here, with the worst accuracy and the worst shell velocity, will be significantly more difficult than it will be with the FV. So yeah, but here's one of the huge advantages that the T25 Pilot has. In terms of shell cost, it's 255 in comparison to I think 680 with the FV. So considerably cheaper to fire the gun. It carries 50 rounds of ammo. 50 rounds of ammo was decent, but there are tanks with a lot more than that, but I'll get that in a second. Top speed wise, T25 Pilot is definitely better at 5 kilometers an hour. In terms of overall mobility, I would say they're pretty much equal, because in terms of terrain resistances, the FV is definitely better. But in terms of part to weight ratio, the T25 Pilot is better. So I believe they would pretty much balance each other out. But as we know from the FV, incredible ground resistances does not mean the tank will be fast. So yeah, you need to be kind of aware of that there, just to make sure. Like, let's see. Alright, I just had to check something on my phone there. So I believe they'll pretty much balance each other out. And in terms of armor, the FV I honestly believe is way better. This thing gets 50 more health. In terms of module health overall, it's a wee bit better. View range is the same, and yeah, for the most part, I would say the FV is a slightly better tank, but this thing here will be better at close range. But I also feel like the armor of this thing means that it doesn't really work as well at close range as it could have. I mean, if you're driving a really low armor vehicle, then you want to have a high alpha gun at close range, in my opinion. Like, that's why the M4 Sherman, what the hell is it called? The Revelries. That's why that works at close range, because it's got 390 alpha per shot, and putting 390 alpha shot into somebody's face, yeah, they're going to feel it. But and with a gun like this here, you're going to be trading shot for shot, and yeah, it's not going to trade very well. That's basically the main point I'm trying to make here, and because it has no armor, every shot you take is going to pay. So yeah, I believe that's the main comparison to this and the FV done. So next one I'm going to compare it to is the M46KR. And if you have seen one of my videos on this thing, you know that I like this thing quite a lot. So let's just compare them in terms of stats. Now, first off, I'm just going to address the armor. The armor on this thing here in comparison to the M46 Patton KR is not even comparable. The Patton KR has significantly more armor. Like, I actually didn't realize initially how much more armor this thing had than the T25 Pilot. But don't get me wrong though. The M46 Patton KR is not heavy, but its armor is pretty significant in terms of how much better it is. Like, side armor up here is 76.2 millimeters. Down here, 50.8. Side armor in this thing here, up here, 50.8. So this is the back half of the side armor for the M46 Patton KR. And it also has this zone here. Now, this zone here is very important. That is 38.1 millimeters thick. that means any gun that's 120 millimeters or bigger will pen this automatically. So yeah, that's a pretty significant weak point, especially considering this thing is a tier 8 instead of being a tier 7. Whereas where I honestly believe this thing should have been placed, this thing should have been a tier 7 in my opinion instead of being a tier 8. So yeah, this is a pretty significant weak point to a tank like this kind of tier. Um, let's see. So the frontal armor. Okay, if I angle both of them at an auto bounce angle, let's just angle this as an auto bounce angle. So we'll say about there. Let's angle this at roughly an auto bounce angle. Yeah, I would say that's pretty good there. Okay, so let's see. Up front plate on this thing here gets around 145 effective armor. Now you might be thinking, that's pretty terrible. And you'd be right. Versus tier 8s, that's pretty terrible. Don't forget, this is a tier 8 medium. It can meet tier 6s and tier 7s. Tier 6 and 7 mediums, what are they notorious for? Pretty terrible penetration. I mean, if you look at a T3485, it's 50-50 whether or not it's going to pen. Same with something like a Comet or T43. And I'm sure there's a bunch more I'm forgetting about. Like even with something like a VK3002M or VK3002D, they're 50-50 whether or not they're going to pen the frontal armor. And that's pretty good. I mean, any damage you can avoid taking is nice, in my opinion. So, yeah, that armor is pretty underrated because versus a lot of tier 6 and 7 mediums, this is pretty strong actually. So, let's look at T25 Pilot in comparison. Yeah, that's pretty significantly worse. I mean, the upper front plate gets about 100. In some places 120 where this track area is. So yeah, it basically has Tiger 1 armor at the front. And we all know how terrible Tiger 1's armor is. Whereas this thing here has, I would say, roughly IS-1 levels of armor on the front. So, yeah, not even a contest between these two vehicles in terms of armor. And in terms of turrets, yeah, not even, like, look, this is the kind of armor that I was thinking the T25 Pilot would have. But yeah, it's not even a contest with the turrets. They're not even comparable. I mean, look at the armor values you're getting off this turret. All over, it's really, really strong. In compared to the T25 Pilot. Yeah. This is like pre-buff M46 Baton KR turret armor, so yeah, that's pretty terrible armor. But now let's get on to the actual stats so I can close that. Okay, so in terms of raw top speed, T25 Pilot is better. But here's where the main difference is. The Patton KR gets 810 horsepower in comparison to 500. Granted, the Patton KR is 7 tons heavier. But 310 more horsepower gives us an 18.41 power to weight ratio. So that's a significant advantage to the Patton KR. And whereas the ground resistances on this thing here are significantly better than the Patton KRs, I still think that the Patton KR will climb hills significantly better than the T25 Pilot. Also, I mean, look at how much that drops off. Even with these amazing ground resistance, look how fast the traverse speed drops off with this thing. I mean, the standard traverse speed on the Patton KR is roughly 40. It does about 20 on soft terrain, and it's about 32 on medium terrain. The only place where the Patton KR is actually beaten is on hard terrain, but that's only because the stats on the hard terrain for this thing here are just so much better. But yeah, overall, I would say in terms of mobility, the Patton KR is probably the better tank. Like that part of weight ratio difference, it's 5.1 difference. That's sick. That's gigantic. But yeah, in terms of overall stats, in terms of armor, in terms of mobility, Patton KR no competition. But here's where it gets interesting in terms of the weapon. Actually, it's just quick to mention. In terms of module health and all, they're pretty much identical. Let's see. And in terms of view range and all this stuff here, they're pretty much identical. Just the armor and the mobility where I would say the Patton KR is definitely better. Okay, so now on to this here. I'm just going to quickly mention the ammo capacity difference. This is what I was talking about earlier. This thing only gets 50 rounds in comparison to the patent KR's 70, and they get exactly the same gun. I should just point that out. But the stats are very different on the different vehicles. In terms of alpha damage and penetration, exactly the same. But in terms of DPM and in terms of rate of fire and aiming time and all, the T25 Pilot is definitely better. So let's just make sure this is effective values. Yes, it is. Yeah. So, I mean, just look at these stats. The patent KR has pretty much identical soft stats. It has a wee bit worse dispersion, but it has half a second worse aiming time. Now, here's where the armor comes into play, in my opinion. The patent KR can afford to sit there and aim a shot. This thing can't. The patent KR has a pretty good chance of bouncing most shots that hit its way. The T25 Pilot doesn't really have that to fall back on. So this thing is going to take damage every time something shoots at it. The patent KR doesn't have that issue. The patent KR has a pretty significant chance of bouncing most shots off its turret. They both have the same health pool, but I think the health pool will survive a lot longer on the patent KR than it will on this. So yeah, you need to be aware of that there, because this thing here, I think if it had been faster than it currently is, I think this thing would have been pretty much equal with the patent KR. But because of the mobility, I would say the patent KR is probably better in terms of overall mobility. Sure, the top speed on this thing's better, but in terms of overall mobility, I think the patent KR will probably beat this thing. It's only the gun where the T25 Pilot will actually beat the patent KR. And if you don't know, the patent KR and the M26 Pershing, almost exactly the same in terms of overall stats. Let's just quickly compare them. Pershing, where are you? Pershing. Probably looking right at it, but I can't see it. Pershing, where are you? There you are. Okay, if you look at them, they're pretty much identical, except the patent KR gets better engine power, and because of that, it gets a better part of weight ratio. In terms of ground resistances, they're very, very, very similar. It gets 10 meters worse view range. It gets 10 more health. It gets a wee bit more module health than the M26. The M26. Let's see. Oh wait, no, that's turret. This thing here gets, I would say, pretty much equal in terms of turret armor. It's got a wee bit better DPM than the M26. Its dispersion and aim time are worse, but it's not ground resistance. It's turret, or its dispersion stats when moving the turret are better, but it also gets that pretty damn horrific shell speed. So yeah, they're pretty much exactly the same tank, except the shell speed's different. That's the main difference between these two vehicles, and the engine power difference. But I would say pretty much equal tanks, except for those. So yeah, I feel like it's pretty good comparison. Like it's pretty good to skip the comparison between this and the Pershing because of that. So yeah, if you have the time to go for the T25 Pilot number one, I would say go for it because it's a free tier rate premium, and there's nothing wrong with getting a free tier rate premium. But it's not going to be the best tier rate premium if these stats that I'm looking at right now hold true. It's not going to be the best tier rate premium by a long shot. I think the main selling point these days of the M46KR is the fact that it's basically an all-rounder. The T25 Pilot isn't really an all-rounder. It's kind of a one-trick pony. It's got the better gun stats, but it's not that great in terms of mobility, and it has no armor to speak of. So, yeah, if you're interested in that kind of vehicle, then you probably want to go for this thing. It makes sense for the crowd that's obsessed with DPM, but for somebody who's looking at a more versatile machine, the M46KR is probably the tank you want to get. But the difference is you have to buy this thing. This thing here you can get for free. So if you can get a free tier premium, go for it. Personally, I'm not going to go for it because I have one of these. I don't really feel like it's necessary for me to go for this. So yeah. Let me know, what do you think of this thing? Do you think you're going to go for it? Because personally, well, yeah, I've already explained the reasons why I'm not going to. But yeah, let me know, what do you think of this thing? Do you think you're going to go for it? And just let me know, do you think I'm being a bit too harsh on this thing? Or do you think it's actually going to be a pretty solid tier rate medium? I'd be curious to hear that. But yeah, if you like this kind of content, if you like mechanic comparisons between different vehicles, then, well, subscribe. That's all I can really say. So, yeah, I think that's about everything I really have to say. So, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.